Over the past few years, everything has changed. Where and how we work and live, the way we collaborate and measure success, and the emerging technologies we use to get it all done. Welcome to The Bridge. Join our host, Scott Kinka, in a series of discussions with top leaders in technology and learn about how they bridge their lives and their businesses into our new hybrid work and AI-driven reality. Our hope is that the insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepoint Technologies, the nation's leading IT advisory firm. Bridgepoint helps business leaders evaluate, procure, implement, and manage technology and customer experience solutions with a focus on realizing sustainable results for your business growth. And now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
We can't stop talking about AI. We believe, or at least we're ready to believe, we can change human productivity, but we're concerned about the autonomy of what we might create. But let's get real. The number of people that are using AI in your company is likely very small. And those that are, well, they're using personal accounts on LLMs like ChatGPT. How do business leaders get ahead of their competitors and unlock the productivity promise of AI without exposing the company to risk? Well, you offer them a gym membership rather than a treadmill. I'll explain. My guest on this episode is a serial entrepreneur and current SVP of AI at Expedient, Brad Reynolds. He's developing a platform for companies to provide curated access to public AI models that include security and information controls. Tools with controls. Gym memberships instead of treadmills. Intrigued? We talk about his current project, home automation, guitars, parallels between music and code. We talk about a lot, but mostly we unpack this novel concept for harnessing AI. And while you're enjoying this episode, make sure to give us a like or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Here's my conversation with Brad Reynolds, SVP of AI at Expedient. Hi. And welcome to another episode of The Bridge. My guest this week is Brad Reynolds. He is the Senior Vice President of Artificial Intelligence at Expedient. Brad, that's quite a title. We're going to get into that, but welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Scott. I appreciate you having me.
Fantastic. Well, let's start with you, and then we'll get into how AI works into that. Brad, just tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about you, where you live, what goes on in your life. Fire away.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, the burgeoning technical metropolis of the United States. So my background's serial entrepreneur, and I've founded and sold a bunch of companies, super nerdy spaces, always been technical coder, engineer. Actually, one of the companies I founded and sold was Expedient, where I'm working at now. And so I've always been in that mode, and my current role as that voluminous title, SVP of AI, is really about an AI startup inside of a larger organization, Expedient. So I get to operate in a way I'm familiar and move very fast and build things, but within the construct of a much more established organization.
I love that. Well, there's a couple of areas I think where we have some potential shared history. You know, our listeners know I was a tech co-founder and CTO for a long time as well before hanging that up. So I call myself a reformed CTO now. So I love that. My wife calls me a tinkerer. Does that phrase fit you? Are you a tinkerer?
Yeah, I'm not only a tinkerer, but a collector. I have these collections of everything, whether it's guitars or books or puzzles, or I'm constantly experimenting. And it definitely plays into the AI story because there's just a lot of tinkering going on there. But yeah, I'm constantly doing that type of stuff. What's your tinkering obsession?
I just mess with everything. That's the problem. Mine is my current tinkering obsession is on automation. Like I just want to be able to walk into a room and like speak to whatever thing is listening, because you know everything's listening, and then just have everything change. And so, you know, I want to be able to voice activate that scene from the middle of what's the movie I'm thinking of? You know, where they're in the dorm and like the bed pops out and the thing comes down, and the Animal House, right? I just want to be able to voice automate like the room turning into what I want it to do. So I'm completely obsessed there now, but I'm also tinkering a lot in music. And I understand that you are a semi-reformed rock star. Is that not accurate?
I definitely am the backup band, but I'm not the
Tell me
lead
about
singer
music.
like you.
I
So
appreciate that. But tell me about music. How long have you been playing? What do you play? What do you do?
yeah, so I just think there's a lot of interesting parallels between music and just creating things maybe in code,
Yeah.
where we tend to think of like systems and code as very formulaic, but at the highest levels they become artistic because it's how you put large things together. How you like for me, music wise, I love jamming. Like practicing the same song all the time is it's just boring to me. It's what
Yeah.
you need to do to be a professional or to go out and play. But I just like getting friends together who are good musicians because you never know where music is going to go. So my strongest suit is guitar, but I'll make music. I'll use the keyboard with the DAW to create music.
Yep.
That the digital stuff that we can do now, one man band kind of post processing is phenomenal. But yeah, I have a guitar obsession. My wife is very upset at how they keep accumulating. I keep hiding them in different spots in the basement, and then she finds them. She's like, "What? This one wasn't here." I'm like, "How do you know? Do you really know? Do you have a picture?" But yeah, like guitar, bass, those would be the main ones.
Yep.
But play the drums, play the keys. It's kind of like whoever comes over. We have like so I live in Cleveland. We have a daddy band night of all guys who used to play out and
Yep.
be in bands. And we don't get to play that much, but everybody brings something pretty unique to the table. So if like a drum expert comes over, we're not playing the drums that night. I mean, that guy's taking the lead on that type of stuff. And, so it just becomes this rotating, movable feast of a jam.
I love your conversation about the parallels between music and tech, right? And I also have an obsession. My problem is that I'm a piano player. So when I collect, they take up way more space. As people know, there are like 3 full-size pianos in my house, not to mention all the electronic keyboards. But that's just my obsession. But I do like what you're saying about, I mean, people, music is emotional to listeners, but they don't realize how mathematical the job is, how pattern based it is. I think one of those things where like autonomically you've got to understand all the patterns and the math before you can make it artistic,
Right.
And I love the parallel to code. And I agree with you. Like anybody can make a thing that does a thing, but to make it sing is a totally different scenario. Let's use that to launch over then. I mean, I had a conversation. It was in Miami a couple of weeks ago, and we've been in the last couple of weeks of the show have been AI centric. We did a big panel at our summit. We broke it up into a couple sessions. I had a data center provider on last week talking about how AI is changing the physical footprint of their data center facilities. It's just been this ongoing thing. And I asked to slide you in at this spot because I feel like the timing's perfect. I was with your CEO, Brian Smith, a couple of weeks ago, and he was chatting with me about some of what you guys are thinking about in AI. And I think the way people think about Expedient, and then saying that you have a VP of AI, maybe they don't get that correlation, right? So you could just start with first, give me the minute long on Expedient for those of you who might not be familiar. And then if you would, can you just explain to me a little bit about your initiative in AI there? And we'll sort of use that to jump in.
Yeah, so Expedient, I started it in 2001 as a roll up. So I bought a bunch of not a great time for telecom, 2001, 2002.
Amen.
But if you had cash, it was a great time to build and aggregate telecom companies. So I ended up buying a bunch of fiber and wireless asset companies, and then just general internet access companies. Cobbled those together and then sold it in 2005 to a very large family office. But the business at that point was evolving from an access aggregation business, a super high speed access. Cogent would have been a similar type company to what we were doing at that point. We accumulated these data centers that we couldn't pay somebody to move equipment into. They were mostly acquired from like Blue Cross, big medical place. We just got these things. We had our equipment there, but so when I sold it, the business was an access business. And the first, like we'll call it the second iteration of Expedient, was from access to colo-centric. And there's a big push in like the mid 2000s of people moving out of either their own data centers or frankly telco closets at their office into a solid facility. And so that ran for a course. The next layer of that is, hey, we have our stuff there or at a different facility, we're going to virtualize. And so the second kind of piece of that was, okay, now we're going to get a lot more efficiency out of our servers by virtualization, functionality, being able to move servers like software instead of like pulling boxes and moving hardware. I was gone by that point, but that was like V2. Mm-hmm. V2 or V3 of Expedient was cloud, which is, that's putting it up against like AWS and all of that. But Expedient has a very bespoke kind of managed infrastructure that fits a certain type of company that needs a little more handholding than you're going to get with one of the hyperscalers. So there's been a series of evolutions. The thing about tech is that I don't know that tech has been sexy ever, but the sexiest I ever saw it was when the internet first launched, like this real start of my career.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, we need this internet thing. We don't know what we're going to do with it. I remember setting people up like Jones Day with email. Like they're like, they don't know how we don't have a website. We need this email thing. Nobody knew where it was going to go, but everybody kind of knew that it was an important thing. So this is the first time now since then that frankly, it's been the only time in my life where if I go to a cocktail party and I say what my title is, it's like everyone wants to talk about it. No one knows what they're talking about.
Even more so than being a musician. You're getting all the chicks with AI now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't know if it's paying off that way. but
you're the most interesting guy in the room now.
Yeah. So basically, for both you and I, let's milk it while it's here.
Right. Exactly.
But I think that's the important part is it's a door opener. So for Expedient, I look at it being at the earlier part and now as I see Expedient as a series of stair steps, but the technologies were more like efficiency technologies and reliability technologies and not transformative in terms of business operations. It's very rare technology, like electricity would have been a transformative to business operations technology. And so I look at this as just another dot. It's just a very exciting dot on kind of the Expedient stair-step journey. And this dot for all of us, whether it's Expedient or your career or other people's careers, I look at this personally as like, I'm halfway through my career. I'm 45. The book's half, the first part of the career was access and kind of data center. I'm looking at the second half as being all AI stuff. And so everybody that's listening should be thinking about how do I become an expert in AI? Don't exactly know all of the pieces, but it's their stair step too. And so we're just, I would say we're on the bandwagon with that for sure.
When you said something earlier that I thought was an incredible parallel to where we are with AI right now. You said, back at the beginning of the internet, people were like, they knew they needed it. They had no idea what they needed it for. There weren't use cases yet, but they were like, I got to get me some of this stuff. And, you made the parallel that's sort of where AI is right now. I think when people are thinking about AI, there's a million different kinds of applications that are driving off of that right now. But I think the public persona, let's say, of AI right now are the public large language models that are out there. It's the chat GPTs of the world. And now they're starting to get a little bit of that attached to Office 365 with Copilot beginning to pop up, on desktops, and people are starting to feel it and understand what prompts mean and all that kind of stuff. As businesses are trying to figure it out, corporate use of public LLMs, right, is a blessing and a curse in some ways. I think people understand the potential blessing, but what are the challenges that creates in your mind?
Yeah, I think we'll look at that as a stair step too. So we'll just call it AI adoption for humanity, let alone corporate AI adoption. And the question that I would ask, and we're all looking at the business side, but kind of what inning of the ball game are we at? There's all kinds of interesting conversations about use cases and applications and how AI can transform a business. but is that really where we're at? Are we at the point where we're implementing those things? Or if we all look at our individual companies and we say we have 400, 500 people, how many of those people are using AI on a daily basis? One, how many are using it effectively? How many are using it on the corporate policy? Or are they just buying ad hoc chat GPT on their own dime? It's a much smaller population than all of the conversations would have us believe. So like, why is that? So like for me, that baby step, that first step, that crawling aspect is, what are the things that we need to have in place as businesses to give everybody access to AI as part of, like, I call it like a gym membership at our company. It's like, here's your gym membership. We're underwriting it. You don't have to pay for it, but we're going to put some controls and wrappers around it so that we have logging and monitoring. We integrate it with our authentication so it's single sign-on. We redact PII. We need some corporate controls. We can't just say, hey, everybody, here's access to AI, good luck. We need policies in place too. But so you need something there to kind of get control around AI as a business, but your end goal should not be so much the strictures and control. Those are just things that you wrap around it. Your end goal for like the step one, for the crawl step, is how do I ensure everybody in my business has access to it and is using it as effectively as possible? Because I think one of the stair steps that we're getting distracted with is a couple steps down, which is transformative use cases.
Yeah.
I have always felt, I've built a bunch of companies. All of my transformative use cases have come from my clients. I had ideas beforehand about, oh, this is going to do this and that, and we'll raise money, and what. It never worked out that way. So if you can get your employees learning how to fish with AI, they're going to find those use cases that some could be transformative and some might just save 30 hours a month worth of work, but you're essentially enabling them to do that. So like, how do you do that? You put some controls and wrappers around access to the public models. And that's a product that we have, but that's just a general concept you need to have, because that's why folks aren't giving that as a gym membership to their employees. They're a little nervous. They don't have controls. They don't have audit logs. Just very basic blocking and tackling type work for any type of enterprise software system, let alone something as unsettling or interesting as AI.
I want to come back to sort of your, brokerage service is probably the wrong word to use. I'm going to let you explain it in your words, but I want to take a step back for a second on one of the statements that you made around sort of the technology outpacing the understanding of the use cases right now. Are we very much in like the board level corporate edict in the same way that we were around cloud 10 years ago? It was like the board's like, go to cloud. I have no idea what that means, but take everything we have and throw it out there. Corporate edict, make it happen. And then, today we find an Expedient, we do with you guys as well. We're unpacking cloud, repatriating back into colo or into private, things like that, cloud applications. Are we in the same spot with AI right now? I mean, it's sort of like the corporate edict of move to AI. I don't really know what that means, but please, the board's saying go do AI stuff. Do you run into that a lot?
Yeah. So I would say partially yes and partially no. So definitely it's the first time in my career I've ever seen a technology, and maybe cloud was one of them, but I kind of wasn't in the cloud zone back then, being pushed from the CEO level down, as opposed to being built from the developer level up, as like, hey, we need this technology, this will improve stuff. I would say, so I could see some similarity. If cloud was pushed at the CEO level down, and AI is definitely being pushed at the C level and board level down, the difference is we can all talk to AI. Like, at least in the generative component, we can have an emotional experience with what this technology is. What's cloud? Like, how do I grab the cloud? I can grab AI, and I might not really understand what's going on under the hood or why these outputs are this way, but I can see something that I've never seen before. I saw a YouTube video today of one of the AI guys I follow, and it was like, oh, I have an AI avatar. okay, great. I've seen all these avatars. They don't look like, it was indistinguishable from him as a human. It took him like 10 minutes to do. I'm like, oh, I guess we have AI avatars to do all of our marketing now. And like, I didn't know that until I watched that video today, but like, it's tactile. And the stuff that we can touch seems like it's going to touch our lives in ways that have nothing to do with business. And it's like, when does tech, is anyone emotional about cloud? I mean, unless their business depends on it, I don't think so. People are emotional about AI. It has implications for humans as well as businesses. I mean, we all have the business hat on. We're thinking about what are the business applications. But yeah, like we've never experienced something like that before. And like you were saying earlier, the only parallel would be the early internet, where there's notion that if we democratize access to data, we'd become smarter as humanity, because now we don't have to go through a few sources. We can kind of get it from anywhere. That was the dream that was sold. It kind of turned out a little different. But so I would say that's where the big difference between cloud on the evolution of technology and AI fits.
Got you. Brad, am I going to find out later that you actually sent your avatar in to do this interview? Like, I am actually looking at you right now, correct? I just want to be sure.
I had one of my buddies has an assistant. And you know, like all the scheduling was going through this assistant, and I met him in person, and you know, there's a 50-50 chance that assistant wasn't a human, but it was a human. So I felt good.
Is the singularity near? Well, let me just ask you that question, Brad. Where are you at on that? Where are you at on that spectrum?
What's the singularity?
Well, meaning the consciousness, right? AI I don't want to say run amok, but AI being self-aware.
Yeah. So I actually gave a talk about this last Friday on kind of existential and philosophic implications of AI. Pretty rare I get to talk about something that's not that much bearing on reality and making money. But that was certainly one of the topical areas that came up. And I would say, I don't have an answer to like when a singularity is happening or whatever, but I do have an answer, having dug under the hood of these models and built models, that the thing that we've engineered, and it's made by humans, is like our first contact with aliens. It's and not in like a weird tinfoil hat way. It's more of the way that it thinks and processes is just not the way that we've evolved as humans to process. And so the singularity of it taking over or whatever, I don't know when that's going to happen. I just know that when we try and look in our minds to say why it's doing a certain thing or where it's going to evolve, it has its own mind, a whole different digital kind of neural architecture than we do. And so we try as humans to anthropomorphize AI and be like, oh, it's doing this like the human brain, or it's doing this like people. It's doing it like its alien intelligence has it do things. And it's very difficult to get under that black box and say exactly why, which is, I don't know, to me, intriguing. Like it's like the old areas of the maps in the 1500s where there was just nothing out there. Kind of like, oh, it's one of those exploration maps that still exist. We've mapped all of the continents, but we have not mapped the brain space of these models. And it's just a huge opportunity, an interesting one.
Yeah, and we could spend the next 40 minutes philosophizing about this, but it's sort of a double whammy too, right? Because not only are you trying to explain it in the context of the way we process, but you're trying to explain it using the context of our own language too, right? Which is like, even if you sort of figured out the route it was going, would you be able to describe it with the words we have, right? With the, like, logically speaking, you don't even have the context by which to have that conversation at the end of the day. Sure. It's just producing something completely new. So speaking of producing something completely new though, I want to just jump back quickly and into a little bit more about the product that you're developing right now. And then we're going to have some fun at the end, but let's jump back to the product for a moment. So at Expedient, there's a million things that I'm sure you are responsible for exploring around AI, but right now what you guys have or are in the process of releasing, from my understanding, is a very practical product around, I can leverage my SSO and log in and it will give me access, corporate sponsored access to the multiple public models that are out there. We'll use Chat GPT as an example, but there are
Sure.
others, and you can describe those, and also apply some governance to it, right? How you can use it, why you can use it. Let's make sure you're not sharing corporate secrets. Let's make sure that you're not putting personal information in there. I mean, is that a good way for me to describe what in my mind is a very unique thing that you guys are building?
Yeah, you got it. It comes back to the baseball analogy or the stair steps or the innings or whatever you want to say, where there's all kinds of interesting use cases and interesting infrastructure you can build around AI, but where are people? We need to get people using AI to learn about AI so they can understand what those applications they want to build. So if we're building infrastructure for applications, that happens to be underneath our product. People just aren't ready to have that conversation in depth at scale yet. We got to get them comfortable. So we're like, okay, we've built all this infrastructure to service AI applications. Let's add a chatbot on top of that. But a chatbot to help people get to the goal. So the goal is to give every employee at our clients a gym membership to the best public models available with governance, after which there's a kind of journey down the AI path as they start to spread their wings and understand it. So you're right and so the question would be like, okay, if we built a chat interface branded for clients, what are some of the kind of key elements that an enterprise would need to wrap around it? So one is that authentication mechanism. So for us, we use Active Directory. Being able to have a single sign-on gives, is kind of good from a corporate policy. But the important offshoot of that is it knows my role. So if my role is an HR person, an operations support center person, a coder, as you log into the system, it gives you different context for how you approach the world. So it'll give you, in like the V2 of our product, it'll give you access to different sets of data. So if you're in HR, there's a set of proprietary data that you have access to that somebody as a technologist doesn't. But the seed for that is integrating into some sort of one login type system like Active Directory, so that you can inherit all of that kind of role-based permissioning. Super, super important. I mean, role-based permissioning comes back from the data side, but it also goes into what models do you have access to? There might be folks like, hey, the marketing department has access to GPT-4, but no one else does. For whatever reason, I'm just picking a model out there, that type of stuff. So that's kind of like the starter point, is getting that. The next portion under is about private information. So if you're using public models, you want to make sure that nothing proprietary goes out. And so we have our own, it's actually a model that's part of the chatbot. So when a prompt comes in and they ask, hey, I want to do this, or here's a social security number, it will either filter that and say, hey, there's PII in this and we're not sending it out. Do you want to rephrase that? Or the secondary part of it is it will actually substitute dummy data in. So dummy data will go out. So for social security number, it's a format. It'll sub in a fake social security number, send it out to OpenAI's GPT-4. It'll come back and then it'll swap it back on the way in, so that the model doesn't get confused about what it's trying to do. If you just swap in some long UUID or something like that, it'll get confused. So that's a piece. Third piece is the access to multiple models. So different models are just like different flavors of ice cream. OpenAI's models are awesome. Their image generation models are awesome. But Anthropic's Claude has a lot of awesome capabilities for business too. And Cohere, which we have access to, is one that's very business built. And so it's kind of like, as people are using these models, they have a couple of choices of ways that they want to process. And so that's an option for kind of the V1 of the product. And then the last part is the logging and the telemetry. So as people are using this, as they run into issues, you can debug it, but you also have an audit trail and history. So if there's a concern about what are people doing with this system, you could say like, oh, how many PII redactions has this particular person had? Or do we need to look at what kind of prompting is going out there? So our thought is that on the V1 of our product, those are enough kind of controls, in addition to a client setting a corporate policy about how you use these things. Because the reality is technological controls can be circumvented by bad actors or maybe uninformed actors. And so you have to say, at the end of the day, we have these strictures and controls, but be a good citizen. Here's a policy of things that you should be doing with this and that you shouldn't be doing with this. And I think that you need to have that component in place to be able to kind of unlock the capabilities of some sort of an enterprise grade chat solution.
That's an amazing story. And there's a lot more there. And I'm sure that our listeners are like, how do I get my hands on that? We'll give you an opportunity to explain that in a minute. Let's have some fun before we wrap, though. This has been super fun and informative. I'm going to hit you with a couple quick questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. This one's less fun, but I always find interesting. What's on your end table reading right now? What are you into? What are you reading right now?
Well, big reader. So I'm reading about the creation of the Oxford English Dictionary, and I think it's called A Doctor and a Madman. So back in the day, we didn't have dictionaries. So like William Shakespeare, when he wrote his plays and used a huge number of words in the English language, there's no reference for him.
Yeah,
I don't know how he knew that those words were being used right. Maybe he was making up how they were being used. But the OED was kind of the first compendium of volume in the English language. And how was that created? It was created by a doctor on one side in England and a man who he was corresponding with at volume, who he never realized was an inmate at an insane asylum. And so it was the interplay of those two people, how they ended up combining together. And then the kind of prefix of that story started with him visiting this guy after 30 years of correspondence and finding out that he was an inmate at the asylum. So I like the nonfiction type stuff more than not, and just unique, eccentric stories are super cool. So that's on the nightstand right now.
All right, I'm hoping you have an eccentric answer to this one. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the robots do take over, or the next COVID level event, whatever it is, happens. In some dystopian future, there's only one app that works on your phone, and you get to choose. Which one is it?
I mean, it would be some sort of AI front end.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be that it would be something that I can essentially outsource my interaction to the world with. So right now, that's an AI app. And so right now I'm not going to Google very much, but it would be something like that. What would yours be?
That's a really good question.
It's not that eccentric of an answer. Sorry.
No, it's a good one. I'll tell you what some of the best answers have been. One person said, just make sure the flashlight still works. I asked this question a lot, which I think is kind of brilliant because you have no idea what's still going on.
That's brilliant.
For me, I answered music app because I need something to do. And I would need if the world was cratering around me, I would need a place to mentally go and not physically go. Right. So, music app, again, not an eccentric answer, but it's honest.
Well, what would your dystopian world playlist be? Like, who would be those? Would it be songs or bands? Like, who would you be listening to?
I think, to be honest with you, it would probably be based on what kind of dystopian future we were in, right? Like, if I had to be angry to survive every day, then then I'd be jamming out to, something harder. If the world is cratering around me, I needed to go to my personal reflection zone. I would have something completely different. But I listen from classical music to jazz to pop to rock. I mean, I'm kind of all over the place. It depends on. I'm in a little bit of a country mode right now, to be frank. I saw a great band with our producer back here, Gene, on Monday, Need to Breathe, who I really like. That's been in my car, Ron, a new album. So that's really good stuff.
Right on.
All right. So, okay, one more. Here we go. Last one. I just need a shameless prediction. Give me of any kind, next 12 to 18 months, something that's going to happen in the world. Could be sports, could be technology, could be in your life, doesn't matter. Just, be Nostradamus for a moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, all I do is AI now. I have a family, but all I do is AI. Right. So the thing that I see in terms of the evolution is we're all talking about AI models like they're these monolithic things. So like, hey, it's GPT-4 behind ChatGPT. Well, the thought process on that is like, that's actually 8 models right now. But as I look at enterprises, I don't know, this will be 12 to 18 months. It might be like 3 or 4 years. We're going to have a bunch of models inside of these enterprises that are going to be specially tuned to different functions. We already see it now with coding models versus general models. But the notion of, hey, we have all of these like finely tuned assistants with niche domain expertise. If we have 2 of them, why can't we have 10 of them? If we have 10 of them, why can't we have 1,000 of them? Uber's running 5,300 models currently. And so they're a forefront person, but like, how can we democratize that kind of agent intelligence to business? Like, got to figure out how to scale it. And Ben Horowitz, when I was out at a conference a couple of months ago, said that these models are the new compute. So as we think about virtualization and all of those evolutions, the fact that these models are the new definition of compute. So however we've scaled and deployed compute, think about those same orchestration and kind of structure and architecture thoughts for models, because that's the brains of the operation going forward. And so I think there'll be like this explosion of customization and hosting. And frankly, there's a ton of open source stuff going on, and there's a big fight between open and closed source. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that boxing match works out. But I'm definitely on the open source side. I like to see people using tons of models.
Yeah, I love that. So if somebody wants to leverage some of your thinking right now, and they want to learn a little bit more about, in particular, the products that we were talking about around AI, sort of governance, management, where would they go? How can they learn a little bit more?
Yeah, so if you're on a cursory piece, you can take a look at the Expedient website, and we have a couple webinars, one talking about like AI strategy and another talking about like enterprise AI. Not sales pitches at all. They're just like level sets and, how do you get your compass oriented type things. Yeah. We also have information documents that are attached to that in like a success kit for, again, more bedside reading about how to get up to speed. How to, like we talked about AI use policy. We have some examples of AI use policies that they can employ in their business. But again, nothing Expedient particularly. If there was an interest in deploying enterprise chat for V1 with public models or V2 with your own private data and private models, then you could reach out to me. My stuff's on the website, but my email is just bradley.reynolds@expedient.com. There's probably something in the podcast as well. But if you're interested in that spot, we're currently taking on beta clients for the V1 of the chat. And the bonus is you get in the beta program for V1, when beta for V2, which is private data access, which is really hot, you're right of first refusal in line there. This is not an unlimited amount of beta slots.
Understood.
So we're in that zone of beta right now, and in January we're going to release it in public. But yeah, we're accepting beta clients right now for V1 that we talked about earlier.
Fantastic. And of course, at Bridgepoint, we're significant partners, right? For Expedient, we do quite a bit together. So reaching out to your friendly neighborhood Bridgepoint strategist to help broker that communication, we're happy to do that for you. Brad, this has been super interesting. We went in a lot of places. I can't wait to have another conversation with you in the future about this. But really a great time. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your creativity, and really, really excited about what's to come. Thanks for the time today.
Well, thanks so much, Scott. I appreciate your approach to getting good information out. It was a pleasure to be on the podcast.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brad.
Okay, take care.
You got it. Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepoint Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepoint, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepoint, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.